ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you back to the Sidescape Gaming Podcast. This is episode 162, and we got some weird energy today, folks. We're hanging out in the boardroom, we're hanging loose, and we are ready to discuss the state of media, Ted.
We're apparently.
Hello. Hello. How are you? It's a bro show. We're here.
It's a bro show. It's going to be a bro show for a while.
Yeah, 3 weeks.
Apologies to the James fans out there.
Yeah, apologies to those people that just come for James's tech time with James. That's going to be a new bit. If you ever have any tech kind of things, filter them by me, okay?
Tech things? Like tech questions?
Like questions or,
statements?
tech scenarios. That's a good time to bring it for tech time with James. And maybe we come up with a better name, but that's what I came up with, 5 minutes before the show.
All right, do your little intro bit.
All right. Sorry. Cheers, by the way. Cheers.
Oh, cheers.
Wonderful. Ooh, that is an IPA.
I'm drinking on the job.
Me too.
Apparently.
Yeah. Well, those people in those kind of boardrooms, they drink, Ted. Don't worry. Yeah. So I had this whole cerebral moment while driving today to an account call. Okay. And we've been talking a lot about layoffs. A lot of layoffs are happening offline. Talking about the podcast. Are we going to talk about these layoffs? How much can we talk about these layoffs? We don't know much about these layoffs.
For the record, we are not knowledgeable.
No, not at all. Like
we are not insiders. We are outsiders.
We're outsiders. I had to go on GameSpot and understand these layoffs today.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk to you just about where we are as an audience of things of media. Okay. Because
I'm in. Yeah, sure.
A lot of things happen in my brain. All right, I'm taking you on a journey. Okay. Just grab onto me, ride my saddle.
Yeah. Oh, or if we're jumping right then I do want to state publicly that you sent me messages today from your drive using voice to text, and Google failed you because you sent me paragraph upon paragraph of gibberish.
I'll read them.
You went, I have some great ideas about the show, and then lost me.
Scrap everything about today's episode. I think our conversation should just be on what the fuck's up with entertainment mediums. The all-time think it can encapsulate our discussion over remakes Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I think it can also encapsulate the discussions of layoffs. The Oscars lacks movie strikes everything. Ted.
That's the title of the show.
There it is. Okay.
And for the record, being such a good co-host, I just went, absolutely, let's do that.
Let's do it. Let's rock it. Episode 162, It's Hell Inside My Head.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So the Oscars were last weekend. Okay. So there are layoffs happening all across the gaming industry. We'll talk about that in a second. The Oscars were last weekend. I wanted to bring up something that someone said at the Oscars. So Jefferson, he won the Screenplay Adapted Award for American Fiction, the movie American Fiction, starring Jeffrey Wright. So he won the Screenplay Award. He then talked about in his speech how it was really hard for him to get his movie made for less than $10 million. That was the budget of his movie. It was really hard. And throughout the Oscars, they're jabbing at Madam Web left and fucking right, man. They're just like, Madam Web, we all know it was a dog shit movie, and everybody knows it, and they're poking out at the Oscars. It was great. So he then talked about how it was so hard for his movie to get made, and he was like, imagine all these $200 million movies that come out, and if we could make 10, $20 million movies off these, like that big budget, think about what we could do, like the stories we could tell. So that just got my brain going. Then we're talking about all these layoffs. And the big thing right now is that video games are really expensive to make. And if you make a bad one, you lose hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. We're seeing that all over the place. Skull and Bones. It ain't good. They're going to shut down Suicide Squad servers. These companies don't know what to do with their money. So in the video game layoff space, here's where we're at. And then we can kind of just talk a little bit. But I want to just let you know. So far this year.
Can I just unless you know this, do you know as well if the company you're about to mention was profitable this year?
Oh, no.
I can try and look that up real quick.
To do that for me, as I have 5 companies.
Okay. I might destroy our boardroom friends in the process. Let's see if I can.
That's okay. We'll see if you got the skills. So, nope. All right.
Nope.
Nope.
Okay.
So video games overall, there has been 8,100 people roughly laid off this year so far in the video game space. Unity Software. Give me a little Google on Unity Software. They laid off 1.8 thousand people this year. Early on in the year, 1.8 thousand people this year laid them off.
That's insane. Does that have something to do with their new pricing scheme?
It's got to be.
We didn't really talk about it at the end of last year on the podcast. Unity had changed their pricing scheme to this ridiculous, like, after your 10,000th copy is sold, you then owe us a larger percentage back. Yeah, we should probably do an episode, a retrospective on that. But
on all that, but I'm wondering how that must have really affected them, especially because Epic and Unreal 5 is like so beloved.
Okay. Unity Software's profit jumped up by 12% Q4 of 2023.
Well, it seemed to be working for them. Riot Games, they laid off 530 people. So these are just kind of the bigger companies that I was thinking about. We don't have to know. I know Riot's been laying off people almost every year. They kind of recycle out projects and lay off a bunch of people.
Their profit is not immediately Googleable.
Yeah. They're a private company, I believe, so they don't have to state their profits. Microsoft laid off 1.9 thousand people.
This one...
I would attribute... Sorry, no, please. I've been talking
I think we're about to say this. Yeah. We're about to say the same thing. This one had a lot to do with redundant positions at Blizzard Activision.
Yeah. So like the whole esports division also got axed, which was a large group of people.
Arguably something that was going to happen anyway. Yeah. Overwatch 2 League.
Nothing.
Not hitting.
Dude, did you see Overwatch 2? Cowboy Bebop crossover.
Sure.
Cool. For a moment I was like, that'd be kind of cool. And I was like, I don't play Overwatch 2. I don't need to buy this.
Yeah. What?
It's like Fortnite when they release a Star Wars skin. I just got to buy it.
Oh my gosh. You're part of the problem, Jake.
You're telling me. Sony Interactive, they laid off 900 people. They were profitable last year, Sony as a whole, but I don't think we could find just SIE numbers. But they also closed...
That's a good point.
Yeah, but I know Sony as a whole was profitable. They closed Sony London studios as well.
Right. A lot of their VR came
division
out of Sony London?
Yes.
And then I was also reading a piece of not Just Dance, the other one. SingStar. Do you remember SingStar, the karaoke game?
That was developed by Sony London.
Yeah, and apparently that was a cultural phenomenon in Europe.
Oh, really?
I was specifically reading that it was a karaoke game in the US. It was kind of whatever. It was a pack-in, but apparently in Europe it was a huge deal.
That's so funny. Huh. Weird. Yeah, we didn't give a shit about that game here. And then EA Games laid off 670 people. So that was kind of these big tempo layoffs.
And I did look this up earlier today. EA Games did turn a profit last year.
Yeah, okay. There it is. So, I don't know, Ted. I'm throwing all this at you. Mm-hmm. I'm basically talking about things are so expensive to make right now that if they fail, we got to axe everybody and blow up the ship. What do you think about all of this?
It's scuttle the ship. It's a nautical term.
Sorry, you are the skull and bones expert on this podcast. So I'll give it to you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Please, arg me, matey. Yeah. So, I don't know. What do you think so far? Trust me. I got more notes, but
he's got some thoughts.
But I'm curious kind of where you're at with this layoff situation, games being so expensive. We'll kind of get to that next, but where are we at with mediums, and how do you feel about this whole thing?
So I'll stick to just the layoffs. I will say that I am not super de-duper concerned. Obviously, people have lost their jobs, and that sucks. But I don't think we have enough evidence yet that these companies are in hot water. I think this probably has a lot to do, and you have heard this before on some other newscast, that this had a lot to do with over hiring during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. A lot of, I don't want to say community managers because that is an actual job, but a lot of internet cultivation jobs were developed over the pandemic because obviously there was no in-person. All these companies suddenly, Twitter became a very important part of all of these companies' lives.
Excuse me. It's X.
Sure. Yeah. What happened? Do you exit? Do you X something now? You don't tweet it anymore. You
it's
exit.
X going to give it to you.
Yeah. Every time?
Every time.
Okay. Yeah. The company formerly known as Twitter became very important. So I kind of understand that as we ease out of the pandemic, these kinds of things happen.
And we saw very similar layoffs last year as well. The numbers are pretty similar in a way.
Right.
I think it was 7,000 at this point or something. So 1,000 people different.
Yeah. But. That being said, it's pretty clear. Enough people have spoken out via the interwebs, via X, saying that things are a little weird at my video game development company right now. There's definitely a lot of kind of, I don't want to call it hostility, but a lot of internal tension of am I going to be next? and why. So definitely a tightening of the belts, as we can see.
Yeah.
And who knows? This might be the beginning of something that will be not disastrous, but like will change the industry significantly.
Yeah, well, we talk so much on this podcast about games as a service, and like that. This is kind of where the industry wants to be, but players almost don't want it to be there. But like the people that hold all the money really want this to be what people love about video games is. And I think like that's such an interesting poll where like there is the hardcore gaming audience doesn't want to just have their games as a service. And all these games then go, okay, then we got to make the biggest, best, most expensive game to keep you on our console. And if that game doesn't pay off, well, then we're I mean, I'm not trying to bash Microsoft here, but then you're in a Microsoft situation right now of like, so what do we do? What's the plan here? Because these $200 million games or $100 million games we're making, they aren't moving our needle. So how do we move the needle some way? And that gets scary, I think, in a way that it becomes less about the creativity and more about the returns. So
I think also, I don't think we will see the end specifically of layoffs, especially in larger companies. I think it is one of those things where like if you make a live service game, somebody's forever game, which we now know was a bad idea. But if you were doing that, you were probably hiring an entire staff around managing a community of millions of people. Right. And when that doesn't pan out, when you suddenly get more accurate numbers as the games are out and playing of like, okay, Apex Legends maybe only has 200,000 concurrent players, right? If that. Like we suddenly don't need all of these, background people, community people. So I can kind of see as they tighten the belts, they're getting more conservative about games as a service. A lot of those jobs kind of associating with a community kind of go away.
Yeah, I was actually talking to Maddie about the man that's running the Helldivers. He's the game master of Helldivers.
Right.
And I was like, is that his name, Joel?
Yeah, Joel.
Of course. And I was like, this guy, you have to, he's like, okay, as long as my game is cooking, man, like I'm pumping. I'm the most important person at this company. But the minute that number starts to dip, oh my gosh, what a just nightmare nerve session for that guy. Like my jobs are going to become irrelevant because no one's playing. And Helldivers has had a surprisingly long tail from the spins we usually see with these kind of new live service games. So I was going to go into money. So money is key, Ted. You know this about these companies. These companies that own art, they love money. And we are in the world of money.
Yep.
So
they have to make more money every year.
They have, no matter what. No matter what. Like my whole industry is slow this year in work, and we got to make more money than we did last year, no matter what.
Yep.
Yeah, and they don't like hearing that. Like, but it's slow out there. It's hard. They don't give a shit. Money.
It's stupid.
So, The Last of Us Part 2. Last year during all of the Xbox court stuff with Activision merger, we got a lot of interesting news about Sony, inadvertently, which was one of the great little like slip ups, as they didn't like cross out the right information.
Don't redact with Sharpie.
No, we can see it all. So, The Last of Us Part 2 cost $220 million to develop. Marketing costs aren't included in that. And Horizon Forbidden West cost $212 million. So that's kind of what we're looking at, the AAA, quadruple A, whatever we want to call it.
Those were AAA games?
Those are,
we are now developing quadruple A games.
Well, and remember the first quadruple A game is that Perfect Dark Zero, the new one, Perfect Dark.
Oh, is it? Yeah. I thought it was Skull and Bones.
I love it. So those are kind of like the budgets these companies are working with. So then when you are putting that much money into a movie and it fails, you see these like harsh kind of reactions. I always think of the DC Cinematic Universe, the DCEU, which we all, we loved. But the Suicide Squad movie that was coming out, there was such a harsh reaction to, sorry, not the Suicide Squad, Suicide Squad. Right. So after Batman v Superman,
2017 Suicide Squad. Do you remember when that came out?
16, 17, somewhere around there. There was such a hard reaction to Batman v Superman being like not the MCU that
2016
that they like apparently redid everything with the Suicide Squad to like make it this fun, quirky, cool movie because that's what people wanted, and it ruined everything from there on out. Like everything. I mean, it probably wasn't going to be great anyways because there's a lot of problems. Batman was killing people, but it like ruined everything after that because the tone, everything got jumbled. Nobody cared about what was happening anymore. It was, how do we make these likable?
Yeah.
And I worry about that with video games.
As you should.
I think we should, especially the gamer that I am, because I am not a... Helldivers is a rarity to me. That there's this game that I love that's like multiplayer that I'm trying to get all my friends to keep playing.
Right.
I'm nervous. Mm-hmm. I'm nervous because Sony, the minute something fails, we got to kill it. Mm-hmm. I'm thankful that they canceled The Last of Us Factions multiplayer game because it means they're not trying to kill all their franchises just by getting money. There's some quality control at least. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that scares me. These franchises, these big things.
I don't want to ruin any big moments. Do you have any intentions of talking about all the canceled live service games? Is that part of your...
No, but please.
Okay,
let's do it right here.
I'll bring this up because I think it is very much related to layoffs. In the research that I've done for much smaller companies,
Then Sidescape, like for the other companies you work for? Is that what you're saying?
No. Much smaller companies, video game developers.
Like what 50 sub channel are you working with?
No. Because I spoke on our Game of the Year cast about League of Geeks, makers of that Jump Light Odyssey, which they basically canned. There is basically no funding out there.
Yeah.
If you are a smaller team and you have maybe pitched an idea and got some money to pitch an idea, and now you need money to push through to the end, that is not there.
Yeah.
And that has subsequently has led to a lot of cancellations in the games industry. Games that were not coming out, but we know are canceled. Just off the top of my head, we have Last of Us Factions. Mm-hmm. We have Spider-Man.
Yeah.
The giant web.
The Great Web.
Yeah, which was supposed to be a kind of a co-op-y, MMO-y
looked kind of cool
Spider-Man game.
Like a Spider-Verse game where you're jumping through portals and going other worlds. Looks kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the other one? The Star Wars
Mandalorian single-player
Star
game.
Wars Not Bounty Hunters game. That got canceled. Probably because, as part of this tightening of the belts, it's like, oh, are we making this project? No, just kill it now. We're not wasting any more money on it. And that can lead to some preliminary layoffs as well.
Yeah. And that Mandalorian thing is so weird. Who knows how long ago that was actually canceled?
And I also, there's a lot of debate about what that game was. I can't imagine that EA would stand to have another good single player game. In my opinion, that was going to be a live service game of some kind of extraction shooter, get your bounty and get out.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that's kind of what it is. Yeah. I'd be kind of into that. Play as different bounty hunters, change out your armor.
Well, that's the problem, Jake, is that everybody's kind of into it, but these companies are building these games for you to be like a daily player,
right?
And for you to not pay attention to anything else. And that in retrospect, like that was never going to work. Like, what was the last time you just gave up on every other video game to just play this multiplayer game forever?
Never.
Like some games have had success like that. Like League of Legends has been around for many, many years now with a consistent player base. But even the big boys like Fortnite, well, maybe not Fortnite, Call of Duty Warzone, for example, like that is seeing a drop off in players.
They're going to other.
They're going to other battle royale games. They're playing other shooters. They're playing Helldivers.
Yeah.
Like at a certain point, the audience is cannibalizing itself. Oh. And I guess nobody accounted for that. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. We mentioned it last week on the podcast, but it's so interesting because of Suicide Squad that WB is like probably going to end the servers this year.
Yeah.
I'm going to burp. I'm so sorry. Excuse me.
Do it. It's a bro show.
How unprofessional. Ugh.
Only the bros are watching this episode.
Only the bros and the people in the conference room.
That's true, yeah. They've been listening this entire time.
Yeah, they're just working. Really annoyed by you. But we were talking about Warner Brothers after like kind of basically in like Suicide Squad not meeting our expectations. We are going to double down, though, on live service because this is the future. Like, we're going to make more live service games. And they have such, like, a roster of IP. And we talked about it last week. They made the best-selling single-player game of last year.
Yeah, we should take a moment and do a bit on... Because we kind of talked about it with HBO Max of, like, Warner Brothers and the giant super corporations that own them are all... They're in kind of a weird spot right now.
Yep.
I keep reading about kind of the weird reasons they're doing things. They're delisting Adult Swim's catalog from platforms.
Yeah, that's what you're saying.
R.I.P. Duck Game.
It's so sad.
Yeah. So like they're doing weird stuff. Who who freaking knows?
Well, yeah, they're like,
they're
and then they were in
about.
talks with buying Paramount recently. Like that was like a
Yeah.
whole thing. They were like just Warner Discovery was gonna also like absorb Paramount.
Yeah.
That ended up not happening.
But right,
Yeah.
I mean, as of Q3 2023, they were also looking to sell the entirety of Warner Brothers games.
Yep.
So, who knows the future of that company? They're being a little weird.
Well, that's like what Disney did with that was kind of so smart with because Disney for a while had like a games team. I remember there was like Disney Games and there was a few other things, and they just kind of realized like we could just take our IP and just license it out, and it's going to make us probably as much money as it would trying to develop these games ourselves. And I think that's been such a great little boost for them. So, yeah. Unless they sign an exclusive deal with a company that everyone hates for Star Wars for like 7 years and only make 2 games. Good job. Good job.
They made Jedi Survivor, or the other one, Jedi Fallen Order.
So they made three games in that 7-year exclusivity period.
4 games, Jake. There are 2 new Battlefronts.
And there was 1 Jedi game. Jedi Survivor, that's way later. We're now in the era that anybody can make Star Wars games.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
That was a post. Yeah.
Post.
Is that all they made?
Yeah. 3 games. Well, and the flying one, Squadrons, 4 games.
4 games.
4 games. Sorry. Didn't love Squadrons. Wasn't into it. Not for me.
Yeah. Again, a game that was very much conceived
Yeah.
around the idea of a multiplayer base willing to jump in to play deathmatch over and over and over again, with live service components and updates. And when everybody went, this is a fun, cool, shooty flying game. It's cooler in VR. I'm going to put it down now.
That was it.
Like we now consider that game to be like a dead game. It's not. There are a few people playing it, but like overall,
it's pretty dead.
You go in and play a single player game and you hit that multiplayer button, you're getting nothing.
Yeah. So, okay. So this is kind of what I want to talk. So now we're talking about little franchises. We're talking about how Star Wars has all these different things. So the franchises rule everything. This is in our lives constantly. It's a constant complaint from our parents that's all they make are franchise movies. It's everywhere. So the 2 big games so far this year, in my opinion, like the I guess critical games, are Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown.
Oh, you mean games that have already released?
Yeah, released this year. Yeah, sorry, have come out this year. So you have Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, which reviewed like extremely well, like high 9s, high 8s kind of area, and then Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which was originally going to be our topic today. It's a really great game, Ted. I just can't wait to talk to you about it. So both those games came out. You have not played either.
No.
Do you have any inclination to play either?
So I am interested in playing Prince of Persia, but ultimately I am in a mindset of like I think there are better, maybe not better isn't the right word, but there are more acclaimed Metroidvanias that I would rather play. Given the choice, like if I committed myself after Elden Ring, of like I will play a Metroidvania next, I should play Hollow Knight.
Yes.
And most people in my circles tell me I should play Hollow Knight.
Yeah.
So there really isn't room to then tack on another Prince of Persia. The only reason I would play it specifically is because we do a podcast where we try and keep more or less up to date on games coming out this year, and I need some stuff for Game of the Year.
Sure.
That's kind of the only reason I would play it. I am not going to touch Final Fantasy, mostly because it's number 2 in a trilogy.
And to me, series that came out 20 years ago.
Yeah, and again, it kind of the same thing of like if I was to go play Final Fantasy VII, a remake, I would go play the first one, and maybe if I got through all of that one, I would start the second one. But that's a lot of hours to suddenly commit to a series.
Yeah, because I'm gonna tell you this Final Fantasy VII Rebirth game is like gonna be like an 80-hour journey. It's insane. So yeah, because I wanted to bring up that. So Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown has reviewed extremely well. Both games have, but like this game is reviewed, and like you were saying, the best Metroidvania games. Like in a lot of the reviews, that's kind of what it's called. Is like this is the most polished, one of the best scalability. Like the way you progress throughout this Metroidvania is like amazing, and the art and everything gets really cooking by the end. So what I find really interesting is this game that reviewed super well, and is from a franchise that I think in a way has isolated me, but for a lot of people is a winning formula. People love Prince of Persia. It brings on nostalgia. Yeah. It only sold about 300 copies in the first month.
300?
Sorry, 300,000.
Oh, okay. Okay. That makes me feel a little better.
I was like quick doing it. 300,000 the first month. And it's already less than 2 months after its release on sale for 50% off.
Mm-hmm. And there is a discussion there. So Prince of Persia is currently on sale for 50% off in a lot of the physical editions. They're trying to get it off of the store shelves.
Yeah. Well, digital. So on PS4 or PS5, it is 40% off. On Steam, or on Epic Game Store, it's 40% off. Okay. So it's on sale pretty much everywhere.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. It is 50% off if you look at Amazon's physical cart sale or disc.
And so I think for me, what is interesting about this game and why I brought it up was that because it's attached to a franchise, I'm usually one of those people that I love Metroidvanias, and I'm a pretty up on the up, good game, a big game coming out. I try to play it because we do a podcast and it's kind of my hobby to test out the new games.
You're also very good at it. You're very fast at playing video games.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's not. Well, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, Ted. There's a lot of time spent. I do get up early on purpose to play video games. Right. Yeah, you got to put in the reps. Like Michael Jordan. Yeah. Michael Jordan shot 10,000 baskets a day. I'm out there. I'm waking up at 6 to play some video games. Okay, it's same thing.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah, same thing.
Same thing. I'll three-peat. I'll three-peat. No worry. But I brought this up because this is a time where if someone was to show me a new IP that wasn't Prince of Persia, that was some, this game has it looks like the Persian gods or whatever, and if it was a different IP, I actually might have been drawn to there's a new artsy Metroidvania game coming out. Yep. But the fact that it's part of this franchise, I was like, I don't know anything about Prince of Persia. I got no interest in this. I guess I'm good. It's not even the same main character from all the other games, but that turned me off as it being a franchised property. Where I feel like that the intent was how they're going to bring people into this new game. Yeah. I just find that interesting. I don't know. Thoughts?
Franchise is such a loose term because you bring up a really good point of there is very little about this new Prince of Persia that directly carries over from the old ones.
Almost nothing.
Which in a way is kind of a good thing because if you pop quiz me about my time playing Prince of Persia, I couldn't answer a damn thing.
Jake Gyllenhaal was in the movie.
What's up?
Jake Gyllenhaal was in the movie.
Right. And then we know that's non-canon. I don't know a thing about Prince of Persia. So for them to do this soft reboot kind of makes sense. But at the same time, Star Wars is a franchise, and it is known, obviously, for its original story, its history, its characters, but also the guns sound like Star Wars.
Yep.
TIE fighters all sound like TIE fighters.
Yes.
Pew, 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 pew. That's Star Wars. Mm-hmm. You know exactly what you're getting when you see a Star Wars property. And so you can make, Star Wars unrelated to anything we've ever done, the product
feel like Star Wars.
And it will, quote, feel like Star Wars. Exactly. Prince of Persia, what feels like Prince of Persia? None of us know.
Yeah.
Some of us vaguely remember, but that's not enough to carry a franchise. It almost doesn't make sense. They're just kind of riding off of what they already have.
Yeah.
And we could argue it didn't work, but it's a smaller project. I hope it kind of gets better over time.
Yeah, I think I will play it this year. I'm interested in the game, but it's at this point, I've got a game that's going to consume the rest of my life. So I'm just Cloud, and I'm just hanging out with my friends. I just thought it was so interesting that this game was kind of this soft reboot of a franchise of the gaming ethos kind of, and then you had Final Fantasy VII on the other hand, which is the gaming property, right? That's such the Cloud Strife as the game's mascot almost in a way of the 90s, and it's this remake of a older game that people know of and love, but brings in new people and is retooling and retelling, but it's still complicated as hell, and that's so isolating. I feel these two kind of properties that are the big gaming thing right now, that I don't know. I worry about those kind of things going away because they're not going to make a lot of money, and the way that they're marketed, that impacts kind of what we'll receive. So I don't know. Yeah. I'm a worried man in my my old age of media.
Yeah, I think we will definitely see moving forward here because video games take a long time. So decisions being made right now we won't see for many years. I think we are going to see very much a tightening of the belt. I kind of hope we go back to an era of video games where think PlayStation 2 to Xbox 360 time period of like, we made a fun, enjoyable thing to do by yourself for 15 to 20 hours. And there's also multiplayer there if you want. And if that develops and burgeons, then that's awesome. But if not, you can just play your single player campaign, enjoy it, put it down, and be okay with it.
Yeah.
I think we will start to see a huge shift away from this idea that you need to be online all the time.
I think so too. I think. Well, I hope so. I actually don't think so, but I hope so.
Yeah.
Because I really do feel like that. It's just such a profit-driven business and industry. I mean, we just talked about WB, and they're canceling all these movies that are filmed, made, edited, done.
Yeah.
There's that one with who's in it, and it's the Wile E. Coyote is on trial. He's from SNL. Shit. Oh.
I don't know, but that's a great premise.
Yeah, one of the SNL cast members from the mid 2000s. He's like representing Wile E. Coyote on trial in the movie. But yeah, so that's obviously now just canceled. Warner Brothers will never release this movie that has been filmed, shot, edited, done, and then they can write it off on their end of the year reports, and they make X amount of money back for to be spent at the end of the year. Yeah. And usually they get that money in the terms of bonuses. So I worry about when we kind of get to this franchisization of a property. Star Wars is like the most franchised thing to hell, and it's everywhere and different things, and it's my favorite thing, but it's everywhere. And even as a great Star Wars fan, I'm not keeping up with all the Star Wars.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of curious where it all goes. The Last of Us is like a thing that I hold so dear to my heart, and I hope that like after the third Last of Us game, that's it. We never make more Last of Us, but I know in reality that's going to be The Walking Dead, where we got 45 spin-offs of The Last of Us, and
right.
The Last of Us, The Forgotten Few is going to be an HBO show in 10 years or whatever. So, I don't know. I guess I have a little like pessimism with it, but yeah. That's just where my thoughts are.
It's interesting. I'm just, as you were speaking, I'm browsing the classic Game Informer games that are coming out this year. And the things that are catching my eye of like, oh yeah, that released so far. Like Prince of Persia might be the most digestible new release on that list because, as you scroll through it, you get like one of the Yakuza games. It's called Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth.
Yep.
Reviewing very well, about 100 hours to beat. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you got to really like that is a Yakuza game. Like that is, if you're not into Yakuza, it's probably not going to win you over. I played 35 hours of Like a Dragon, the first one, and it was good, but it didn't win me over to want to go 70 more.
Right. There are other games that I'm skipping out on. Tekken 8 obviously came out. That's a pretty.
And that's a big game to a
game.
certain group of people.
And you have like Persona 3 again, over 80 hours to beat, and then you have Suicide Squad. You have Skull and Bones, two games that these companies genuinely believe you would be spending a significant portion of your week, not your day, but like your week, into these games for years to come. And potentially, for them, putting more money into it as you go every week or every month, every season, continuously. Like there's too many hours. I haven't even hit March, and there are too many hours in this list to be sustainable.
Yeah.
From my uneducated opinion.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I mean, like you said, I play video games very fast, and like I purposefully carve out like hours in the morning and to play my games, to talk about that on this podcast, but also just because I love to play games. But like you have to make a commitment, especially when you're an adult, to like find that time.
And on the flip side, like if you're a kid, like the commitment there becomes less about time and more about money.
Yeah.
And most of my gaming experience up until post college was playing a game from 2 years ago that was on a sale.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely look at this list and I can see the difficulty in like trying to keep up with the amount of content currently coming out. We're kind of in this world of too much content. Yeah. And I'm hoping, Warner Brothers' stupid decisions aside, the games industry at least is starting to notice that and will probably start adjusting based on consumer needs a little bit better. Japan's a different story, but I don't think we are going to get so many 100-hour open world RPGs that we have.
No, I think so too. I think you're right on that. I think like the Western RPG is kind of dead, kind of in a way too.
Well, I think Star Wars Jedi Survivor's sequel.
Yeah.
I wonder if that game will go back to more of a linear-ish, Metroidvania-ish style. Because the biggest complaint that you told me about that game is it's just bigger without being better.
Yes, it's just a bigger game.
Yeah, and I think 2023 has definitely been an eye-opening year for me of just deciding, like, hey, I think I would rather play, best in show of a lot of these genres than just the newest one, because I loved Jedi Fallen Order. I genuinely do. That's a fantastic video game. And I had little interest to play Jedi Survivor after what you and James told me about it, of like, yeah, it's that game, just bigger.
Yep.
And not better, just more. So
we got to make another one. No, I mean, I would agree too. I mean, I had such a great time earlier this year playing through all of Metal Gear. And like, that was time I could have been trying to play the latest and greatest games coming out. But it was like, no, like I've never played this like big gap in gaming history for me. And it's like, I need to go back and get that knowledge.
Yeah, I think to do an episode about that, by the way.
Yeah, we do. I've tried to talk about it like 9 times this podcast, and we never have. They're great games. Yeah, I have that way with like I really want to play Chrono Trigger. Like that's my like white whale game of like.
Okay.
I feel like it's a game that I would love. It's turn-based, so I wouldn't love it in that way, but like the story and the vibe.
Sure.
And I just never done it. So.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on this? What are you thinking? You want to just say goodbye? You want me to tell you a little bit about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth?
Let me get some closing thoughts. Yeah. So you should probably wait. We'll do a real deep dive on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, especially when James is here.
Well, because I want to talk to you about it where I'm not going to spoil it for James.
Oh, okay.
So that's one of the things.
Hit me.
Well, we can talk about it next week. We'll do it next week. We got 3 weeks out, James.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, won't it be nice?
Dude, it's been great. Here's what we do, Ted. Here's what we do.
For the record, James is fine. He's been disappearing a lot. He's fine. He's doing okay.
He's like vacationing, moving. He's just those of you asking.
He's doing great.
Are you getting a lot of emails about James?
He's doing great. Yeah, people have asked.
Oh no.
Is James doing all right?
James all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's fine.
We're laying him off.
Yeah.
In the spirit of the games industry.
It was time.
We're cutting 30% of our staff.
Yeah, we got to save costs. What I was going to say, no, what we'll do is I think next week MLB The Show is out. And we'll do a day at the ballpark where I tell you about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Ooh, okay. I'm into that.
That's what we'll do. So, Ted, what are your closing thoughts on this thing that's in my brain?
Yeah, I would say you talk about being worried about the games industry. And I'm not worried yet, but I'm very curious what 2025 looks like. In terms of offerings, I personally am hitting a point where as I just said, I would rather go back to some better retro games than just play the newest game.
Yeah.
And I wonder if we might see something of an overcorrection. Grand Theft Auto 6 withstanding. I know there's a lot of talk of like, don't release your game in 2025 because no one's going to care anymore.
Yeah.
But I wonder if there's going to be an overcorrection of like, Ubisoft decides Metroidvania as a genre is done for because nobody played their game in favor of playing Hollow Knight or, whatever.
Yeah.
And so I'm very interested to see if we get something of an overcorrection to where you, me, and James come onto this podcast, January of 2026 and go, there just aren't any good games right now.
Yeah.
The other thing I'm really curious about is the pivot to mobile. We talked about Warner Brothers quote unquote doubling down on wanting to do live service games. Multiverses coming back.
Isn't that crazy?
I'm actually pretty excited. I'm pretty excited. I did not hate that game when it came out.
No, I didn't either. When they pulled it, I was like, there's just no way this game's ever coming back.
Yeah. But no, shoot, now I lost it. Thinking about multiverses. Thinking about multiverses.
No, I do understand what you're saying. I think you're right in a way that we will see. I think we'll see a reduction of quantity because I think a lot of what we see now is like it's kind of rapid quantity of games.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to appeal to so many different audiences. I think you'll see like movies. We're in the infancy of games, and there were so many movies that were just made in the 90s. Movies are coming out all days in the 90s. Every weekend a new movie is coming out.
Yeah.
That's not how it is anymore. Like blockbusters come out like once every month maybe in the movie theater. And I know pandemic, but before the pandemic, that was also something too.
But in contrast, there is a new 10 hours of television on every new streaming service every week.
Every week. No, of course. But, I would equate like PlayStation, Xbox, Ubisoft, like big titles as like the movies we're getting. And you would almost think like the indies are almost like the shows that we're kind of getting on the sides. But like, you get these big drops of like, boom, here's the game. We're seeing a reduction of that already. Sony's not going to have one until 2025. So another another AAA game until 2025. Yeah. So I think we'll see a reduction of the amount of games flying at us from all these companies, especially as they all start to consolidate. So I think we'll see that in this industry.
Yeah. I recaptured my thought and I got a new thought. We'll see if I remember it. But yeah, I'm curious. This reduction that we're speaking of, I'm curious if we'll move into like a mobile game setting. Many of these companies have said like we think that Gen Z won't even buy a console. They're just not into it. They have a tablet for school. Like they're going to transition.
They also said that about our generation as well. Just putting that out there.
That's
the console. The consoles were going to die after the PlayStation 3.
Is that true?
Yes. Yeah. And PS4 was like one of the best selling consoles of all time. So but yeah, you're right.
Okay. Yeah. So and so many of these companies have stated they're going to pivot. I'm very curious if we'll see bigger, more expensive titles show up on the iOS store. And I do mean like PlayStation's God of War 2018 or whatever shows up on the PlayStation, like on the Apple Store.
Resident Evil 4 Remake is on the iOS App Store. You can buy it on the new phones. Yeah, the full game.
So I'm curious if we'll see like a reduction in new content and more of like we'll fill out all the edges. Basically, you can play these games that already exist anywhere.
Yeah.
It'll be an interesting world. I'm hoping, maybe to the opposite of your worry, that we start to see a world in which PlayStation and Microsoft, Ubisoft, they're making 2 to 3 games a year each. They're all short and they're all very, I don't want to call them art movie, but like that single player action adventure focusing on cinematography. Where like we are trying to tell a story. We are trying to, do this multimedia thing. I wonder if we will start to transition into that.
Yeah.
Just in terms of like, we can't have all these forever games.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there will always be Forza. There will always be Gran Turismo. There will always be a green driving game and a blue driving game.
Sure.
Those will be there for you. But like in terms of other stuff coming out, like, maybe we ditch yearly Call of Duty for like a genuinely good war story video game. Crazy thought, but who knows?
Yeah.
We actually haven't had one of those in a long time.
Yeah, I'm curious where we're going from here. I don't know. I this year's schedule of kind of what we know is coming does not make me confident in like a brighter gaming future, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess one last thing I'll touch on is something that I have noticed. I don't know if you've noticed this, but I noticed this with Helldivers 2. And I am noticing it with Star Wars Battlefront Collection, which I believe is released at the time of recording here, where we are getting very trendy in our video game consumption of like, oh, you gotta buy Helldivers because it's the biggest thing on the planet. Awesome, cool, and it's a great game. Objectively speaking, it's a lot of fun. I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
And then now you're getting this idea of like, well, you gotta buy Star Wars Battlefront Collection now, because that's when we're all going to be playing it. We ethereal community.
No, but flip that to Power World earlier. Power World was the biggest game on the planet, breaking records, and now nobody talks about Power World because we're all playing Helldivers.
Yeah. And so I'm starting to see this very much like, it's almost the same thing has happened with the FGC, the fighting game community, where because there are so little fighting game players, you kind of need to follow the mass of player base.
Yep.
Wherever the group is playing fighting games, that's kind of where you have to follow. When they all want to go play Tekken, you're a Tekken player now.
They're all playing the Star Wars Masters of Terrakasi. That's where you're at, man.
Yeah. So, and I'm wondering if multiplayer games is following in those footsteps a little bit.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, we all need to play this game this week because 3 weeks from now, everyone will have moved on. You won't be able to find a full match.
Yeah.
And that to me is my worry of like, is it worth it to buy multiplayer games if no one's around to play them anymore?
No.
who knows?
That's why like Helldivers has stayed on way longer than I think anybody has expected Helldivers to be like relevant.
Yeah.
And that's like a month.
Yeah, and Helldivers has an advantage in that I don't need to search for an opposing team.
No, right. But I'm just saying, like, a successful right now games as a service launch right now is a month of people being like, we like this game, this is fun. Like, this isn't a year into Helldivers, we're like a month in.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, look at how good this game is doing. So yeah, I don't know. We're in an interesting spot. Speaking of Helldivers, Ted, I'm ready to go dive in. I'm gonna be honest. I'm ready.
All right.
It's percolating. It's feeling good.
Yep.
Thank you for indulging me in my therapy session.
You're welcome. Yeah.
We
got to do this every once in a while, you know?
Yeah, we just got to break it down.
We got to do the, like, all we need is a sponsor for, like, male enhancement or, like, an energy drink. And then we're just every dude who starts a podcast in his garage. We're just spitballing ideas we have no idea about. No.
But you should take them all as fact. And
yep.
Please. Okay?
Yep.
And if you
Turbo
don't like
Golf
the end
Racing
of it, just
is
cut
be
that
game
part.
Of the year.
Yeah, it's going to be fine. Thank you so much for watching the 162nd episode of the Sidescape Gaming Podcast. My name is Jake. That's Ted. James isn't here. And we will see you next week without James yet again. All right.
Also, Sea of Thieves is the highest pre-ordered game on PlayStation right now.